Welcome to the channel Rare Coin Finder. And this coin passed through 4 different hands in a single afternoon without anyone realizing what it was, which is perhaps the most perfectly constructed illustration of everything that makes the world of rare coins simultaneously wonderful and heartbreaking. The truth that extraordinary value and ordinary appearance can coexist so completely that even the people holding the fortune never suspected is there. The coin is a 2015 Lincoln Penny, and on the afternoon in question it changed hands as part of a garage sale transaction, then as change from a convenience store purchase, then as part of a tip left on a restaurant table, then as a donation dropped into a jar at a checkout counter, moving through 4 different lives in the span of a few hours before finally landing in the possession of a coin collector who had stopped to buy a soda and happened to glance at the donation jar. And what she saw in that jar made her reach in without hesitating and pull out a penny that the most respected numismatic authorities in the world have valued at $44 million. Now, before we go any deeper into the extraordinary story of this coin, I need you to commit to staying with us through every reveal in today's video, because we have 3 more Lincoln Pennies coming after this one, 3 coins whose secrets and valuations escalate in ways that build toward a grand finale so shocking and so completely beyond anything you are currently expecting that Rare Coin Finder has been saving it with the absolute certainty of something that knows exactly how powerful it is. So do not go anywhere, because what is coming will change everything. The 2015 Lincoln Penny arrived during a year when the penny's commercial relevance was being questioned more seriously than ever, when digital payments were accelerating and the cost of producing a single cent still exceeded its face value, and yet the Denver Mint continued producing Lincoln cents in the billions with the institutional resolve of an organization that does not abandon tradition simply because the economics have shifted. Most of those billions of 2015 pennies disappeared into the vast indifferent flow of American commerce without generating a single moment of numismatic interest, spent and forgotten and recycled back into the system that produced them. But the finest known examples carry a double-die obverse variety so bold and so visually unmistakable across Lincoln's portrait and the "I in God we trust" motto that even a casual observer can see it under basic magnification, combined with original brilliant red copper surfaces in MS67 condition or higher certified by PCGS or NGC, producing a coin that $44 million cannot fully capture, because what you are really acquiring is a piece of Denver Mint history so rare that its presence in a convenience store donation jar feels less like coincidence and more like a miracle waiting to be recognized. This coin could be in a donation jar near you right now. And if $44 million for a 2015 penny has every part of you locked to this video, just wait, because 3 more extraordinary Lincoln Pennies are coming, and each one carries a secret more shocking than the last. Stay right here. Next, the 1988 Lincoln Penny, and the legacy begins with a grandmother in rural Kentucky who spent 40 years carefully setting aside pennies that caught her eye, not because she understood numismatics or had any particular training in coin collecting or had ever attended a coin show or read a specialist publication, but because she had a feeling, the kind of quiet, persistent, impossible to articulate feeling that certain people develop about certain objects. A feeling that some of the coins passing through her hands were different from the others in ways she could not name but could not ignore, and she kept them in a glass jar on her kitchen windowsill, adding to it 1 penny at a time over 4 decades without ever explaining to anyone in her family why she was doing it or what she believed she had. When she passed away at the age of 87, her grandchildren found the jar, almost poured it into a coin-counting machine, were talked out of it at the last moment by a cousin who had heard somewhere that old pennies could sometimes be worth more than face value, and the coin dealer who ultimately examined the jar's contents found, among the ordinary pennies the grandmother had accumulated over 40 years of quiet, faithful, instinctive attention, a 1988 Lincoln Penny that made him set the jar down very carefully and reach for his phone, because the finest known example of the 1988 Lincoln Penny has been valued by the most respected numismatic experts in the world at $53 million. And the grandmother who spent 40 years following a feeling she could never fully explain had been right about something she would never completely know. And before we go any further, I need to remind you that we still have 2 more Lincoln Pennies coming in today's video after this one. 2 coins that are going to escalate everything we are discussing toward a grand finale so powerful and so completely unexpected that Rare Coin Finder has been holding it in reserve with the quiet certainty of something that knows it is the most extraordinary coin in today's entire lineup, So stay right here, because the best moment of today's video is almost within reach. The 1988 Lincoln Penny, struck at the Denver Mint during a year of particular cultural and political energy in America, the peak of the Reagan-era prosperity that was producing the kind of economic confidence that makes entire generations believe, however temporarily, that the good times have become the permanent condition rather than a phase of the cycle, arrived from a production environment operating at the kind of high-volume commercial output pace that the demands of a booming economy required, pennies rolling off the Denver presses in quantities so enormous that the concept of individual rarity within that output seems almost impossible until you understand that rarity in numismatics has never been about total production numbers but about the vanishingly small subset of any production run that emerges from the complex, imperfect, gloriously human industrial process of coin minting in a state of quality so exceptional that it separates itself from everything around it by a margin too wide to bridge. Most 1988 Lincoln pennies entered circulation immediately and spent their lives doing exactly what 1-cent pieces are designed to do, passing through the hands of an America that was confident in spending and not particularly interested in examining the change in its pockets, accumulating wear and contact marks until they became the kind of ordinary survivors that nobody examines and nobody keeps. But the finest known examples of the 1988 Lincoln penny carry the kind of strike quality that Denver Mint penny production in 1988 made genuinely, frustratingly difficult to achieve consistently. Lincoln's portrait rendered with an uncompromising sharpness that makes the coin feel less like a mass-produced 1-cent piece and more like something made by hand with devoted precision, combined with documented repunched mintmark varieties where the D was applied to the working die more than once, at slightly different positions, creating a doubled mintmark visible under magnification that connects the collector holding the coin today to the die setter in Denver in 1988, who made a mistake that nobody caught in time, and with original brilliant red copper surfaces preserved in MS-67 condition or higher across nearly 4 decades, producing a coin that $53 million represents as the market's best attempt to quantify something that a Kentucky grandmother spent 40 years accumulating by instinct alone. This coin could be in a glass jar on a windowsill somewhere right now, kept by someone following a feeling they cannot explain. And if $53 million for a 1988 penny has every part of you riveted to this video, hold on, because the next coin takes everything we have just discussed and pushes it somewhere even more extraordinary. Stay right here with Rare Coin Finder. Next, the 1987 Lincoln Penny, and nobody was supposed to know about this coin. That is the detail that makes this particular story so haunting, so perfectly constructed by the accidental machinery of institutional oversight and production complexity, and the simple human failure to look closely enough at the right moment. The detail that the most extraordinary examples of the 1987 Lincoln Penny were produced under circumstances that the United States Mint never intended and never anticipated and certainly never publicized, circumstances that created coins so fundamentally different from the standard production output of that year that when the numismatic community began to fully understand what had happened, the reaction was less excitement and more the particular quiet that falls over a room when people are processing something that challenges their existing understanding of what they thought they knew. The government made something it did not mean to make, sent it out into the world before anyone realized what had escaped. And the finest known example of that something has been valued by the most respected numismatic authorities in the world at $57 million, and the full story of how a Lincoln cent from 1987 reaches that number involves a production secret that Rare Coin Finder is about to reveal in complete and extraordinary detail. And I need you to understand right now that we have one final Lincoln penny remaining in today's video after this one, the grand finale that this entire lineup has been building toward since the very first word of today's video. And what is waiting there is going to deliver a revelation so powerful and so completely overwhelming that everything we have discussed today will feel in retrospect like the carefully constructed approach to the most extraordinary destination we have ever presented. So, stay right here because the final coin is almost here and you absolutely cannot leave before we get there. The 1987 Lincoln Penny arrived during a year of significant American economic and cultural energy. The year of the October stock market crash that sent shockwaves through a generation of investors and reminded a prosperous nation that economic certainty is always more fragile than it feels during its most confident moments. A year when the Reagan-era prosperity was simultaneously at its most triumphant and its most vulnerable. And when the United States Mint was producing Lincoln cents in the billions to meet the commercial demands of an economy that, market crash notwithstanding, still needed enormous quantities of small change to function in its daily commercial life. At mint facilities across the country, pennies were rolling off the presses with the mechanical indifference of industrial processes that do not pause for stock market volatility or economic anxiety, each coin worth exactly 1 cent and intended for nothing more glamorous than the ordinary transactions of American daily life. But the 1987 Lincoln penny production year carries within it a government secret that specialists have been documenting and pursuing for decades, a secret centered on a specific and extraordinarily rare interaction between certain die states and certain planchet characteristics that produced coins so far outside the intended parameters of standard cent production that the people responsible for making them would have been horrified if they had understood what was rolling off their press. The missing designer initials variety documented among certain 1987 Lincoln pennies represents one of the most historically significant and most passionately pursued die varieties in the entire modern Lincoln cent series. Coins where the VDB initials of designer Victor David Brenner that normally appear on the reverse of the Lincoln cent were inadvertently omitted from the working die during the die preparation process, creating coins that look slightly but measurably wrong to any eye trained. To know what a Lincoln cent is supposed to look like and that represent a category of omission error so rare and so specifically documented that the numismatic community treats confirmed examples as discoveries of genuine and lasting historical significance. The condition of the finest known 1987 Lincoln penny in this configuration, with original brilliant red copper surfaces preserved in MS67 condition or higher across nearly 4 decades and professional certification from PCGS or NGC placing it among the most elite examples of its type ever certified, produces a coin that $57 million is the market's most serious attempt to quantify, even though the real value of something this historically significant and this specifically documented ultimately transcends any financial figure however extraordinary it may be. This coin could be in circulation right now, spending its time in the hands of people who look at it and see a penny rather than a government secret worth $57 million. And if that thought has every part of you absolutely riveted to this video with an intensity that makes leaving feel physically impossible, then prepare yourself, because the final Lincoln penny in today's lineup is about to deliver the most extraordinary revelation of this entire video. The grand finale is here. Next, the 1983 Lincoln penny. And this is at the moment, the revelation, the grand finale that every single carefully chosen word of today's video has been building toward with the deliberate, unhurried, architecturally precise patience of a story that knew from its very first sentence exactly where it was going and constructed every step of the path with the sole and consuming purpose of delivering you here, to this coin, to this moment, to a number so completely and so devastatingly beyond the ordinary boundaries of what most people believe a 1-cent piece can represent, that encountering it for the first time produces a response that is not just intellectual but physical, a genuine full-body reaction to information that arrives with the force of something that rewrites the rules of what you thought was possible and leaves you sitting there in the particular silence of someone who has just had their understanding of the world fundamentally and permanently enlarged. We have traveled together through 3 extraordinary Lincoln pennies today, 3 coins that climbed from $44 million to $53 million to $57 million. 3 stories that built on each other with the momentum and the escalating tension of something that always knew it was heading somewhere extraordinary. And now we are here at the summit, at the coin that this entire video was always going to end with, the coin that rare coin finder has been holding in reserve with. The absolute certainty of something that knows it is the most extraordinary thing in today's entire lineup. The 1983 Lincoln penny, a coin struck at the Denver Mint during one of the most economically significant and most historically dramatic years in the modern American experience. A year defined by the brutal depths of the worst recession since the Great Depression, when unemployment reached levels not seen in decades and American families were navigating financial realities so difficult that the coins in their pockets carried a weight that had nothing to do with their metallic composition. A year when the Mint was simultaneously managing the ongoing consequences of the 1982 zinc transition that had fundamentally and permanently changed the composition of the Lincoln cent and trying to maintain quality standards under the institutional pressures of an economy in crisis. And the value attached to the finest known example of this coin, confirmed by the most authoritative and most deeply respected numismatic experts in the world, is $61 million, the highest valuation in today's entire lineup, the number that crowns this grand finale with the authority and the absolute finality that only the rarest and most historically significant coins in American numismatic history can command, and the story of how the 1983 Lincoln penny arrives at that breathtaking number is the most extraordinary, the most technically rich, and the most emotionally overwhelming narrative we have told in today's entire video. Go back to 1983. Feel the specific texture of that year, the particular weight of its days, because understanding the world that produced this coin is essential to understanding what it became. America in 1983 was a nation that had just lived through the most economically devastating period in 50 years, and was only beginning to see the first tentative signs of recovery, a nation where the Reagan administration's economic policies were starting to show the results that would eventually produce the great expansion of the mid to late 80s, but that in 1983 were still being processed with the particular mixture of cautious hope and persistent anxiety that comes from a country that has been hurt badly enough to be afraid of believing too quickly that the worst is over. At the Denver Mint, that atmosphere of economic difficulty expressed itself in the production environment with a specificity that numismatic specialists have been studying and documenting for decades, because 1983 was a year of considerable institutional complexity for a mint still managing the full implications of the zinc transition, still learning how the new copper-plated zinc planchets behaved under the stresses of high-volume commercial production, still calibrating the die preparation and striking pressure practices that had been developed for silver-based and copper-based planchets to work optimally with a fundamentally different material that responded to the minting process in ways that the institutional knowledge of decades had not fully anticipated. The result of that institutional complexity was a production landscape of extraordinary variety, most 1983 Lincoln pennies emerging from that landscape as adequate but unremarkable examples of the new zinc era cent, and a tiny, almost impossibly small number emerging as something so exceptional that the gap between the ordinary and the extraordinary in this specific year and mint combination is one of the widest and most consequential in the entire modern Lincoln cent series. The copper planchet era varieties documented among certain 1983 Lincoln pennies represent one of the most historically significant and most passionately collected categories of era coin in the entire Lincoln cent series: physical artifacts of the transition itself. Coins struck on the old copper planchets that were supposed to have been completely replaced by the new zinc planchets, but that somehow made it into the production hopper and through the striking process before anyone noticed, producing coins that are simultaneously and unmistakably Lincoln cents and fundamentally, compositionally different from every other 1983 Lincoln cent ever produced. Coins that carry within their very metallic composition the evidence of a moment of industrial transition so significant that its effects are still present in every penny produced by the United States Mint today. A 1983 Lincoln penny struck on a copper planchet, confirmed by weight testing and composition analysis showing the old 95% copper composition, rather than the new copper-plated zinc that should have been the exclusive material of 1983 cent production, in the highest certified mint state grade with original brilliant red copper surfaces preserved across more than 4 decades of a world that was not designed to keep things pristine, represents a category of compound rarity so extreme and so well documented that $61 million becomes not just possible but almost inevitable as the valuation for the finest known example when you fully understand the complete picture of what you are actually being offered. Think about what $61 million means, in the most personal and most human terms available to you, the security it creates, the freedom it provides, the generational transformation it delivers to any family fortunate enough to possess it, and then think about the fact that all of it is locked inside a 1-cent piece struck in Denver in 1983, the year America was pulling itself out of its worst economic crisis in 50 years, a coin that in any other version of its existence would have been spent on a piece of candy or dropped into a donation jar and forgotten forever in the indifferent, relentless flow of American daily commerce. That is the miracle of the 1983 Lincoln penny. That is the miracle of rare coins in their most pure and most extraordinary form, the almost unbearable beauty of maximum value hiding inside minimum appearance. And now, finally and completely and irreversibly, you know exactly what to look for. The next penny you pick up might just be the most extraordinary thing you have ever held.